Okay, welcome everyone. I'm gonna just get a thumbs up for the people who are joining me as presenting, that you can hear me okay, that your audio is working. Excellent, fantastic. I can see you on camera, which is great. Honey, we can see you as well. Fantastic, you can hear us clearly. Excellent, thanks. Great, and hopefully everyone who's joining us can see us and hear us clearly. Welcome to the presentation today, to the webinar today, talking about the challenges of launching data and AI products in the non-profit sector. We really appreciate having you here with us. And just to get things started, if you can access the chat, we'd love to see where people are joining us from. So feel free to jump on the chat, introduce yourself, and let us know where you're joining us from. We'll start in just 1 minute, and then we will dive right into the presentation. Just while I'm doing that, I'm going to also share my screen. And if someone from one of our presenters, Omran, can you just give me an audio that you can see my screen? That'd be great.
Yep, we can see it, AI for nonprofits.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we'll get right into it. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining. We are joined by 3 really interesting speakers to talk about a few different AI use cases today. And what we're talking about is AI for nonprofits and taking AI products from prototype to performing in an organization. We're going to look at the challenges. We're also going to look a little bit at the structure of like what it takes to get from having an AI idea all the way through to actually implementing that idea, sustaining that idea, and then scaling it. And kind of the things that work and the bumps along the way. And we're going to use use cases to talk about that. I want to start out by thanking Omdena for hosting the webinar and for inviting me to moderate it. I'm very excited about this. I also want to recognize International Women's Day today. So welcome to all of our strong female contingent that are joining us in this space. And we're going to start this presentation just by me giving a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. And then I'm going to hand over to the presenters to discuss in more detail different parts of this process and how they've navigated it with products that they're using and use cases that they've been implementing as well. So to get us started, so as I said, I'm going to introduce, then we have Amran Najjar, who's joining us from Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, Florian Edelmeier, who's joining us from SOS Children's Villages, and then Harini Suresh, who's joining us from Omdena, to each go through just a different use case to explore what it takes to get an AI product implemented, I guess, in the NGO space or the nonprofit space. So what we're going to look at today is this workflow, essentially. Starting at the very left of this presentation or this slide, we start with suitability, understanding whether AI is the right solution for your problem. Then once you kind of have an idea of whether or not the answer to that question is yes, then we move ahead. Then looking at like the feasibility of this. So if we understand that it's suitable, like what next about like what is possible and how we're going to actually achieve this. Next part of the process is looking at readiness. So a big part of that is, it's great to have a really good idea, but also we need to know, is our organization ready? And we're going to explore a little bit about this in some of the use cases as well. If we're ready and we're ready to implement, then the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about is sustainability. And this is like, if you have a prototype and you get it running, that's great. And success is often one of the biggest challenges is what do you do next? Understanding like how this thing is going to last, how it's going to continue. And then the impact is where we're going to get to in terms of what happens with this product or this initiative after it's in the wild. How do we measure impact? How do we know the upside potentials and downside potentials? And I'll explore these really quickly in the next few minutes. So suitability, and keeping in mind, this is just laying out a general framework. This does not necessarily suggest there's only one way to do this. It's just a framework by which we'll discuss today. So when we talk about suitability, looking at what the current problem is that we're trying to solve, understanding how it's currently solved, and then also understanding where AI could enhance this process. Because we're here to talk about AI, we assume that the answer to this question is yes, is it suitable? However, we do know, and many of us on this call and others who are joining know that sometimes it's not. And I think a really important part of suitability is knowing when you have good fit between problem and solution. Because there's, particularly in nonprofits, there's a lot of hype and expectation around what AI can do, but that needs to be very much grounded in reality about what it actually will do. Then looking at feasibility, when we talk about feasibility, where we're starting from, what we have and where we want to go to. Understanding the resources. For nonprofits, this is a big thing, whether or not we have the resources, whether or not we need the resources, and also where those resources are going to come from. And then finally, a critical part of this feasibility is around partnership. So who are we going to work with? And you'll hear some of the examples today talk a little bit about who we're partnering with, because for many nonprofits, this is a very big task that often we can't take on ourselves. But in saying that, there's also many generous donors and partners, and actually Omdena being a good example of this, of people that you can work with to help us get us to that goal. Readiness, I know Florian probably has quite a bit of recent experience in talking about this as he's going through the development of a toolkit to understand readiness in AI work. So understanding like what we know and what we don't know. Checking what we have in-house and what we need. A little bit similar to resources, but also in terms of expertise. Do we have people who know how to make this happen? Have they done it before? And who do we need to help us get us there? And then organization. Are we as an organization ready for it? I think every organization is ready to amplify their impact with AI, and that you've probably heard this catchphrase probably somewhere in your time working with nonprofits. But you need to reality check that and say, like, but as an organization, can we take this on? Are we willing to invest the resources, not only to get it to a pilot stage, but also get it really through that, like, into the progress stage of moving it forward as an actual product. Once everything goes well, and we assume that it goes well, then we need to start thinking about sustainability. And I'll probably say that while this is the third step in this kind of framework, it's definitely something to be thinking about from the beginning. You want to plan for failures, but you also want to plan for success. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed in a couple of projects that I've worked on or been connected to is that when everything goes right, that creates a very different problem. One of my old bosses used to call it the Gucci problem, where everything is kind of like going quite well, and how do we deal with that success? How are we going to maintain things? Even just maintaining a big implementation is quite difficult. Often organizations have maybe a product owner, but no teams to sustain this kind of stuff. So how do we keep the lights on? How do we keep things stable and secure? And then the big question that everybody gets asked in the nonprofit world, which I'm sure you've all been asked before, is how do we go to scale? And I'm not taking any position on how to do that. But these are the questions that often come up from C-suite or management to be, how do we go bigger? How do we go deeper? How do we go further? How do we go wider? Like get more people, increase usage, leverage it and partner with other organizations. And like I said before, this is something that you will definitely not want to think about when everything starts going right. You'll want to be thinking about this from the very beginning. The next thing, the next thing that we'll have to think about is impact. And this is about, just the impact and the upside potential and downside potential. When we talk about upside potential and when we talk about downside potential, we're talking about like what happens if everything goes well, what will be the flow-on effects of our work? How will this impact, improve livelihoods, make people's situation better, all of those things that we work for, respond to disasters faster. On the downside potential side, we need to think about what we might miss, what might be the risks that exist that are potentially unforeseen, and really have, again, this is another one of those thoughts that you want to have early on in the piece, to be thinking about we often, when we're thinking about AI and ML, we're thinking about here's all the great things that it can bring. And this is not to put a downer on that. I totally agree with that, but also to think like when we implement into potentially vulnerable populations at vulnerable times, so in like the case of disaster and yeah, other kind of conflict or challenging situations, we want to make sure that we're not exacerbating any problems. And we know that AI has this huge upside potential to include and improve, but if we get that wrong, and we've seen some good examples of this in the commercial sector around bias in AI, what could happen? And then I think a really important part of this around impact, and particularly from working with large NGOs, is how do you keep feedback of those you are impacting into the loop? And I kind of will come back, I kind of want this point to land with a lot of people that often in nonprofits, we go through this pilot phase, and if it's successful, we want to scale and we want to push it. But when we get to a point where it's in a population that might not have been exposed to AI before, it might be in a population that's vulnerable, it might be in a population that could be negatively impacted, how do we quickly understand that that's happening and then make a correction? Because we want to make sure that the people that AI is being kind of, I want to say imposed upon, but the people are being impacted do have rights and power to be able to call out issues when we see it and when these issues arise. So that's a very quick run of the framework. This is kind of the points that we'll be looking at today. And each of these presenters and speakers that we've got with us today are going to present their use case, talk a little bit about different parts of this framework. And hopefully, if possible, some of them might show some of the work they've been doing as well. And so that you can see ways that they've made things work, challenges that they've faced, and some of the successes that they've had along the way. So we'll start, I'll start by handing over to Omran Najjar. Omran, you can hand over to Florian, and then Florian, you can hand over to Harini. I'm going to switch my mic and video off so no one needs to focus on me. And yeah, I appreciate you all joining, appreciate your attention, and looking forward to hearing from the presenters. So over to you, Omran.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. This is Omran Najjar. I'm the AI and advanced data engineer within HOT. My background is software engineering and information systems, and I have a master's degree in machine learning algorithms. Within HOT, in order to take you to our use case, we want to have like a little journey to show what we're doing and how would AI hopefully amplify our work. Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team is part like a nonprofit organization, and we mainly use OpenStreetMap, and those are like two different things. We'll start with the OpenStreetMap. It's like a free and open source project that has started around like 17 years ago, and so far, and it's like a collaborative project in order like to provide the free geospatial data for any use. And that project is built by volunteers and continue building by volunteers, and all of the features there are created by those volunteers. You can become a volunteer with just creating your account, go to any specific area within the world and say, this is a building, there is different things here, this is a traffic light in your neighborhood or like anywhere else in the world. Now, focusing more on humanitarian OpenStreetMap, we're focused in specific areas that is unmapped yet. Like consider this area, there is nothing there when you check the map, but if you check the imageries, there are some people living there. Those are not presented. They might be vulnerable for disasters. They might have living near a dam. A disaster might happen soon there. They're not included in any development. You won't find those data also available for the public in like the standard maps like Google or Bing Maps. Focus there is in different areas. In OpenStreetMap or in HOT OSM, we're more focused on 94 countries, and it's where those 94 countries are classified and selected based on the poverty level and other indexes. because of the major need in those areas. In HOT, we envision a world where everyone is counted on the map, and we want to make the map data available and accessible for decision-making when a non-profit organization is trying, for example, to plan something in a development project in Zambia, in Tanzania. One of the, I can remember use cases is Beirut explosion back in 2019 in the port residential area. Everyone needs to know, all organizations need to know, like in the time of the event, how much the population affected in order to plan their urgent responses. Now, if you are ready to map, and this is exactly where normally my daughter would be jumping into the camera and waving to people inside the presentation, and it's always a disaster. It's always like a distraction like this during the presentation. Welcome to COVID era. Yeah, so in HOT, we're trying to amplify those efforts in order to map the whole world. How? We have multiple tools, and those are called the OSM ecosystem tools. HOT is part of that community, OSM community, and we're trying to build tools, technical tools that support the mission we have. One of the biggest tools we have is called Tasking Manager, and it's organizing projects for mappers in order to go and map. Those are validators also can go and check what the mappers have done. All of those are volunteers, and they can be organized by a project, and that project will be focused in specific areas. In those specific areas, we will be dividing the project into multiple smaller tasks, and then community member would be going, selecting a task, mapping there, and pushing the data into a next level, which is the validation part, where someone more experienced mapper will be coming and checking what the previous mapper has done. Say, okay, if it's not a good mapping, it's not accurate, we'll send it back to the community volunteer saying, we will need to do more efforts on that one. The one we presented earlier was like an online tool. And we have other tools like JOSOM, which is like a desktop application. Will do the same functionalities as well. Now, so far, this is HOT. There is nothing related to AI or machine learning or computer vision techniques we're doing. A lot of initiatives have been running around. The biggest one, according to my evaluation, the biggest one has been Rapid. Rapid, it's an AI-assisted mapping where those features has been predicted by a model, an AI model, computer vision, which will work on satellite imageries, detect where are those buildings, and then made them available for mappers to come and select. And that will make it a little bit easier for mappers rather than drawing the whole buildings. And couple challenges has been there that it's focused on specific areas. We don't have like those features predicted for the whole world. The biggest contributors in Rapid as of the AI features are like Facebook, where they deployed as a public available data set the roads around the world that they have detected. Microsoft have also provided buildings in different areas, mainly focusing on Africa. Recently in 2021, also there were a paper and a project from Google where they also ran this ran their model and provided Africa buildings as well. Now, couple challenges in the previous scenarios that we've noticed, and those are based on the model are not open sourced, and somehow it's being like in the discussion or in the focus that we don't know how this has happened. The imageries has been like a lot of a big challenge, and this is reflecting back to what Bo mentioned about like the readiness, if we are ready or not, because we don't have that piece in order to make the AI work better. And model bias, among all those models has been developed around satellite imageries. It's the biggest challenge. It's the dream for all these like computer vision scientists to have the model that works everywhere. So it's a big challenge because a building or like in an area which has like different features in Asia is a little bit different from Africa. The background would be a little bit gray in desert areas, while it would be green in different areas. Those are one of the biggest challenges. What we're currently doing is we're trying to have a different models running in different areas, and those will be to avoid the bias. Plus, we will be having somehow the source totally open, applicable, and usable by other organizations or other interested parties who would like to use the same models in different areas. Plus, all of those will be contributed by the community and coming back to our community. In terms, it's like we're more interested in data scientists, master students who are working on around AI and computer vision, and then they would be able to give something to the community, their model, their techniques, their little tweaks in order to enhance the models, and then that will be feedback into like the community usage at the end. Reflecting back on Bo's presentation and Bo's slides about sustainability, we attended a seminar last week, and one of the professors there, she is working on computer vision to define species, like bird species based on imageries. When we discussed the sustainability there, it's like she somehow reflected that to the NGOs, because they were like NGOs and data scientists within that seminar, in order to take the sustainability to have a sustainability support rather than a sustainable solution. Sustainable support somehow reflects with what Bo mentioned also about the maintain. What do we need to do next in order to continue and scale more? One of the biggest feedback we got from them is to get ready, to get our data ready, to have our data as an organization, as an NGO, in a specific timeline and a specific pipeline, and that pipeline should be feeding into an AI model. It will be like a little bit challenging for computer vision experts, AI experts, to bring them to onboard them into finding a solution without having the data ready. What we got as a feedback there is try to have all your data feeding into one pipeline until the beginning of the start of the AI models, machine learning algorithms, or computer vision things. In our case, that's going to be the training data, where we have like we should have a massive amount of training data in order to train those models and like have a better impact from it. Plus, it's their expertise there, those computer vision experts, to find and like retweak your pipeline in order to feedback and keep the model learning. One great example we had there is consider that AI model or computer vision model as a child, where you're showing them exactly what is a building means, and then they will be confused when they see new areas. So bring that child and show them the new areas, they will learn and develop in order to detect also those buildings in the new areas. And that has been like an amazing experience there. And like it's reality. Models needs always to be developed. AI models need to be developed. So they will need to be learning and improving with time. It's an infinite game at the end. And that's it for me. And over to you, Florian.
Thank you, Omar. I think you can share my slides as we agreed.
Yep.
Thanks a lot. So hello to everyone. My name is Florian Edelmeier. I'm the team lead of the software development unit at SOS Children's Villages International. Acting in this role, I'm responsible for several product teams. So we have several global applications. On the one hand, greenfield applications, which we develop on our own, but also assisting to custom off-the-shelf products from the finance area. And I have one team which is dedicated to data engineering and data analytics. And these I'm very proud of. These are very smart people, and we can provide with this expertise our business experts who want to become more fact-driven. Because you can imagine, maybe that's similar to your personal experience, everyone, if an NGO or not, wants to become data-driven. So we started a lot of, let's say, speedboat projects, proof of concepts, because the momentum in our organization is quite high. There are a lot of business experts who want to get this technology into their regular processes, and but we really feel the pain, referring back to Bo in his introduction, how to make this sustainable and how to make this in a structured approach. Even maybe the term is a bit not sharp enough, in a more strategic approach, because we also need our decision takers to be part of this project, because we need money, resources to really support our business partners on the long run. Oman, if we can switch to the next slide, please. So the first thing what we did, we had a look at our value chain. This was a really interesting project several years ago under the umbrella of NetHope, where our former enterprise architect participated in building something, a generic model, what could be in the INGO world a common value chain. And we tried to map to our SOS value chain where our proof of concept and speedboat projects are located in the value chain. And guess what? 99% of these projects were in the fundraising and income generation thing. Of course, it's obvious the money is there, and also, to be fair, the research is quite developed, methodologies are there, and I think they are more or less easy to apply to our use cases. But beside fundraising, our second, or our equally most important thing is, of course, program delivery. So we started a project thinking about how we can also become more data AI driven in that area, a very sensitive area, because as a childcare organization, all data related to our beneficiaries are very, very sensitive. Today I want to give you two quite small examples where we found some interesting new perspectives. Maybe they are not the high sophisticated ones, but they really met need on the ground and with our business expert. If we move to the next slide, something quite simple. And this is where I want to demo. It does not have to be always the high sophisticated machine learning is. We bring a new perspective on our data. We collect on a very, very granular level how our beneficiaries and families in our care develop over time. And what everyone is looking for, how can we measure our impact on this? Because this granular information, what kind of service a beneficiary gets, and this regular assessment, how can we show them that we are successful in providing them a good start in their former lives? And there, the need calculation met really the attraction not only of program but also of our fundraising departments. So a beneficiary starts in participating in our services, and according to the global 8 dimensions, there is an entry assessment, and over the time we took regular assessments, and the average time someone is in our services is a multi-year project. And when they exit we have also a second big assessment. This is when someone is exiting our services, and there we want to calculate that there is an improvement, a holistic improvement. Of course, we can do this on a beneficiary level, we can aggregate on a program level, or even globally. And there, which was made us very happy, we saw that the beneficiaries in average in our programs have quite a good improvement compared to the global direction, where we see that times get even harder for children across the world. And the second example, and I think this fits nice to hot, even not as sophisticated. Again, we want to start also our spatial analytics portfolio in a deeper way. Of course, we want to get more information where our beneficiaries and families are located, and yes, that's nice GIS functionality, but also a quite nice example from the ground. We talked once in a design workshop to a product officer in Africa, and he told us he has not enough resources, and how should he visit for this regular assessment our beneficiaries in a way that it makes sense, on the one hand from the need of the beneficiaries, because maybe he visited this child a long time ago, and also from the perspective, does he need my help quite urgently? So is he progressing well, or is he somewhere stuck in his development plan? And of course, especially in Africa, we have the situation that our social workers have to drive quite a lot to visit them all. And it's quite a small and simple application following the traveling salesman algorithm, to be precise, the weighted traveling salesman algorithm. And in their, let's call it, weekly stand-up, where the program officer is planning, they have now the functionality for each social worker that he gets the route for the rest of the week, who he or she should follow to make the biggest impact on taking these new assessments. Next slide, please. So just two small examples. But what we learned, on the one hand, from more sophisticated machine learning projects, but also from this simpler data-driven things. We learned that even if you have a proof of concept, never do it because of technology is cool. There is a business need. It's the classical thing in software engineering, always start with the business need. And I like this hierarchy, the data science hierarchy of needs very much. Yes, the cool algorithm on top, everyone, there is the spotlight on, but it needs a lot, really a lot of work to prepare your data from a data engineering perspective to get ready for this, and to do it in a sustainable way, to make it repeatable, to make it reusable. And yes, many of the vendors say, yeah, that's a low code solution. But what does this mean? How do you integrate in such a pyramid? So the engineering expertise has to be there. If it's no code, if local or whatever, it doesn't matter. But you need engineering expertise to make it, to architect it in a reusable way. And one very important thing is we learned is you can't stop at the reporting level. You have to give back the data you somehow calculated or however to the ones who are working with it. So you have to create some kind of product out of it to make it successful. And the last slide now, from this perspective of being successful. Yeah? So now we are in the situation that we have quite some successful proof of concept speedboats, but how can we build a service out of it? And now this is the problem where we stay discussing with our decision takers what is worth, where they see potential building up a service for the federation, which makes sense to quite some stakeholders to build them up. And we have to, this slide is in a very preliminary state, yeah, and don't take it too serious with this journey from descriptive to prescriptive analytics, but it should show that there are many possibilities in the area of data analytics and AI, and not always the one on the far right corner is the one you should head for. And decision takers have to be aware where they want to invest, but invest on a sustainable way. And the second message I want to deliver here is, on the one hand, you know, also the value chain, it's a little bit siloed. But what we have to learn as an organization is bring our value chain under one view. It's not only fundraising and program delivery. How can we see it as one big process, as one big system where we have a lot of interdependencies? And I think we can learn quite a lot if we approach this from a more holistic and integrated view. Thanks a lot. Also, Omran, thanks for sharing. Diana, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, I'll take it over. Thank you. So, hello everybody. I hope I'm good audible and also correctly seen. My name is Harini. I'm the head of projects here at Omdena. And by the organization, we generally work on we have various initiatives, out of which I'm responsible for the core challenges, where we work on real world challenges that we solve through AI. One of the case studies that I would like to present here at this stage is about helping people with visual impairment to easily use buses through computer vision. This was in collaboration with an organization called Renew Senses, and it was focused on Europe. So moving ahead, we all know that this is one of the things like sustainable development and all that the previous presenters and Bo were talking about. We know that we have at least 2.2 billion people who have near or distant vision impairment, and in that some vision impairments have not been prevented, or it is yet to be addressed. So we do have some majority of the people who have blindness or impairment over the age of 50 years, where they lose the ability to see based on the age. So we wanted to basically, our partner Renew Senses, they wanted to build an AI solution with that. And as an organization or us, what we do is that we bring together collaborators from different parts of the world. So in this particular challenge, we had about 52 collaborators from 23 countries, where they came together, and they all have different experience levels. We have like different experience levels, starting from a beginner to a PhD, and everybody working on this particular solution to build. So this on looking at the bigger picture, of course, this is one of the sustainable development goals, and it also contributes to the good health, well-being, and the National Federation of the Blind. Now, the project objectives were, this project was only or primarily focused on helping people with visual impairment in public transportation. And namely over here, we have it in the form of a bus. So we used object detection and OCR knowledge techniques on that. Our priorities were primarily that we detect if a bus is arriving or not. And once we know that the bus is arriving, then it's about we detect the bus and recognize if that bus is what the person wants to land into. Basically, after finding out a specific text on the bus plate, we see if this is the destination that the person wants to go to. And then after we recognize, yes, that this is the bus that they would like to land in, we would like to understand if there is a seat that is empty or non-empty to assist users. So we basically wanted to build an AI solution which covered all these three priorities. And working on that, we have a bottom-up collaborative self-managing approach. That's the biggest a part of our own organization, where we see all the collaborators working among themselves, coming up with various solutions to determine which is the best approach to go to. So like we see, we had like three priorities. We did not have a management approach. It's among the collaborators, how they design specific tasks, take up which task they are familiar with. We had tasks like data collection, data labeling, bus detection, image processing, so many different things that I'll discuss in the upcoming slides. But among all these, each collaborator, we call them as collaborators, they take up a specific task and collaborate with several others among the line to see which way they can actually focus on, or which is the one that they can build. And this was concentrated on Europe. So what we did was we had various data sets that were available online, but apart from that, one thing that we went ahead was about collecting the data sets directly from the German buses. Now, how that went ahead with is we had specific challenges with the data set because we were not able to collect data set where a bus was coming along the way. So that is with respect to object tracking, because we will need to identify if a bus is just arriving or it is already standing at the particular location. So we had that. And inside the bus, we were not able to find available data set to figure out if the seat was empty or not because of privacy issues. So one thing that we did was annotations, like the tools that we can see here, the CVAC tool and etc., where we collected the bus images that were already available and we annotated it by ourselves to see if it is actually incoming bus or if it's a not incoming bus, and then we labeled it. Apart from that, one thing that stood out, and that's the base of how collaborators come together to solve the challenges that is impacting, is about they went ahead and collected the data set by themselves in Germany. That is, they recorded the videos of the buses and took pictures of the buses, which can help us in this particular model. And again, for the seat detection, we use the data sets from YouTube, where we could download the seat image videos from YouTube and generate the images based on that. This is our modeling overview. So our partner Renew Census, they had a device called as Travis. Now, Travis is a system that is fitted into the eyes of the visually challenged people on how they can actually, the Travis captures the surroundings which is around them, and then it works on the modeling on identifying if a bus is coming or not, and then figuring out if that is the bus that the person has to get into, and then figuring out a seat. So all these models that we developed, we made it a point that it goes on well with the partner's device, which is the Travis, which is compatible with that. And Travis is basically kind of a mobile embedded device. So it works well with a mobile net. It wouldn't work on our virtual machines or etc. So this was our primary goal. We inform the user if the bus is coming with good precision and in real time. Why real time? We used a combination of object detection and object tracking so that we ensure that the bus is coming and it's not already exiting. We used YOLO v4 tiny model, and the architecture we also implement was SSD MobileNet v2 because we wanted to actually embed it in a mobile system. That's how the visually challenged people use. And then the second process was the bus line detection to see which is the bus or what is the bus going to, destination of the bus. We used optical character recognition for it to see if what is the number plate or the bus plate, what does it evaluate to. And we deployed all that in mobile deployment. That's why we use the MobileNet SSD, because we wanted to make it compatible with the devices that the visually challenged people could use. And the last part is about the post-processing, where we removed unnecessary voice, unnecessary noise removal, and ensured that we got the correct details, the proof of concept, because this is something that we wanted to have a two-layer validation, since we cannot make any miscalculations or misjudgments on this. So we removed the noise using gamma and binarization, which helped to move the results. And empty seat was again an object detection model with the architecture mobile net to see if the user has an empty seat, if the user can actually see the empty seat or not. So once the model detects that we have an empty seat, that would go through the Travis device, and then that would inform the user that yes, this is an empty seat and you could sit here. One of the improvements that we can, though we have specific challenges working on this, primarily that is with data, and we could pull it off because we had people from various other countries and who could actually go to the point and collect data. The other major improvements that we could have is about the Android app. because we had to build it, or we had to deploy it finally on the Android app. So this is one of the main challenges that we still have and we're still working on. Though the model works well with the mobile device, we still have various ways to improvise on it. And it's about the further augmentations, because the data set was still limited. Though we collected data set from the specific location, we do not have a lot of data points. So we will need to work on improving the data collection by augmenting the data, etc. And the last part is about the deployment. So though we develop models and we collect data, the deployment part is where which can help the end users to make the best use of the models. So we used PyTorch based models initially, but we know that PyTorch based models are a bit heavy to run on the mobile device, or particularly the tiny device that we were provided access to by the partner. Hence, we went ahead with using the MobileNet SSD, which can be deployed on a mobile device. So this is the kind of an overview of how the app looks like. The TensorFlow Lite app, how the bus comes and we detect the bus panel. We firstly see if a bus is arriving, and then see what is written on the bus panel, and then we see if it's an empty seat or not. This is the deployment pipeline. We used Dockerization and AWS for it, which finally helped us to deploy it in the mobile device that the partner has shared. While we quickly are going through this, I can just brush through the demo that we have. So this is a real world detection problem, or a real life object tracking event, where we see among the pedestrians and among everything else, we try to find out if a bus is arriving or not, and then see if what is written on the bus lane. These are the few results that we had actually gained during the project. Yeah, so finally, I'm glad that the demo and everything was pulled out with our team in a period of 2.5 months. I would like to thank all the collaborators present here. These collaborators made it successful. We are a team again of about 52 collaborators from 27 countries. So thank you once again for all those who worked on this project. Thank you. And I'll probably pass it on to Bo.
Thanks, Harini, for wrapping that up, and thanks everybody for their presentations. We have about 10 minutes left, and I would like to encourage everyone who's presenting to just jump back on screen if you can. That would be great so we can see you. And for those that are with us, if you have some questions, please put them in the chat. I'm going to actually start with a few questions of my own. I can see one that Omran's coming at you in a second, so if you can see that chat, I'll warm up for that. But actually, Florian, I'm going to start with a question for you, because I think Harini needs a break from talking before we come back to her. But Florian, I have a question for you. When you're looking at your product pipeline and how things work in terms of the product lifecycle, and also you've kind of worked with different levels of management, what do you think is the one thing that organizations, nonprofits particularly, tend to overlook when it comes to implementing AI? Like, what is something they forget about or maybe don't put enough attention to when they're discussing implementing AI in an organization?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, but a quick answer is business analysis. I think, but this is not from my personal experience. This does not happen only in AI or data applications, because this very high speed where the expectations are high to deliver quite fast, new products, new functionalities, I see more and more the tendency not to take time to think about upfront. I know, now I'm as well, I love the agile methodology, but still upfront is not a bad word, a bad term. And really to analyze what are your stakeholders, what are their needs, and what are the real questions. I know we all asked this, yeah, but we really jump through it because we already have the feature table in mind, which we want to prepare and see our first results. Even if it's a sad tendency, I see the business analysis world has not the visibility and the impact any more than it has been, let's say, now I'm old, 10 years ago.
Excellent, thanks, Florian. And I actually hear something in that I saw in Harini's presentation as well, about falling in love with the problem, not just the solution, and really like breaking that problem down into something that's tangible and feasible. And on that foot, I'm going to actually step over to Harini. So I've got a question for you about the solution that you had, and putting this into the framework of impact and, like, dare I say, scale. Like, what next for this project now? Like, it seems like you've got a good proof of concept. It seems like you have a working, let's call it, prototype. Like, where does this go to from here?
Yeah, so not just this project, every project that we work on an impact-based framework, we develop a proof of concept, or we can say that it's kind of a base model. So the base model that we built here is first used for a massive testing by the partner. In this case, it was the Renew Census, where they tested this on how it works, the reliability and the precision level of the model with different use cases and with different edge cases. And once that is done, once we actually figure out that this base model works and good on it, we try to build on top of that. So we have different phases where we figure out what are the main drawbacks. So any model that we build cannot be 100% or 100% accurate or precise. So we figure out the edge cases where it doesn't work, and then try to build another model on top of it, which actually gives a very good solution or a reliable solution. So that's over a period of 1 to 2 years where we test and then see on working conditions and then build again on top of it.
Fantastic, thanks, Harini. And I'm just flagging a question that's in there. I'm going to come back to you on that one in a second. Hopefully you can see it. And I think it's a really good point that you make, and I'm just going to highlight this. Harini said 1 to 2 years there. I think often I find in nonprofits, people think, oh, we're going to get a solution out there and it'll be in scale in like 4 to 6 months. I would encourage everyone on this call, if you're working with nonprofits, shut that down quickly, because it can become a bit of a challenge that you tend to face over time. Omran, to you on the question that came in the chat, and I'm recognizing there's a few questions coming through here, so like if we can keep it relatively brief, about transferability, it looks like. How do you manage to keep AI models reliable and efficient in case of data changes and data shifts?
Yep, thank you, Nabil, for that question. Actually, in the scenario we're building, we're more focused on, we're focused totally actually on the raster images. So regardless of where that image is on Earth, if there is a data shift or not, we're building the model just to focus on the raster ones, and the labels will be also detected on that. And then there is a post-processing step that needs to be done in order to transfer those into like a geospatial information. And then if we have a shift and we know that there is a shift, it's something we can like handle hopefully in the post-processing, not rather than focusing on the model itself. I would also like highlight one of the biggest challenges is the different, and that's related like to data shifting, because like imageries are multiple sources, and like within ID editors and like geostorm editors in a humanitarian mapping, like Bing imageries are available, Maxar Premium as well, like Esri and different sources as well. Those won't be exactly the same because they're coming from different sources. I would say we normally like in HOT, what we're doing is we're getting always the latest, we're focusing on the latest one, And that would be like not even very latest. Like those imageries are very expensive and they're not available always. And like they will go like 2 years back in history. So if we have an area where two imageries are there, even if they are shifted, we're just focusing on the recent one because it reflects more the reality of like today coming like the recent times. Is there any, and that's it for me. Back to you, Bo. Like, is there any other question I can help with?
That's great, Omran. For anything that's more of a general question, feel free to just throw it into the chat so that we don't miss them. There's a question there about starting with data science, like where to start, where to find data, how data science fits in these projects. But I'm going to go to Harini next. And then if we have time, Florian, I can see one in there for you as well. So I'll go for the specific questions to begin with. So Harini, take it away, the steps that you took to increase the accuracy of the model.
Sure. So yeah, that's right. Our major challenge for the project was the data set. And this is a challenge that comes up with every project that works on real world problems, because unless and until it's a movie data set or something else which exists, we would have a lot of data points. But when it comes to real world problems, it's very difficult to collect data in real time. And that way, if it's actually occurring. So if it's something with something related to the past data or something that related to rainfall or temperature within the past 10 years, we have data points for all that. But when it comes to this, we do have a data deficiency. And to overcome this, we performed two steps. One of the major things that we did was actually manually labeling all the data points to see if the data that was already existing, how much of an accuracy that we can actually achieve. And the second one was testing it on data that were not available online, but were collected by our own collaborators, from the German buses, etc. That was the major breakthrough, I would say, because the one that were trained on the data that was available open source and that could be tested on the real world data, we were able to, we can actually validate the accuracy. And when we knew that we were not able to reach a certain accuracy on the real world collected data, we tried data augmentation on both the open source data set that was available and the data set that were collected by the collaborators. If
Wonderful.
there is any follow-up question,
that is a great amount of information in a very slim amount of time. So Harini, feel free to add. And there's also a question in there from Kennedy that I think you're going to be best in place to answer. You can just answer it in the chat about the challenges from Omdena. Florian, you have about 1.5 minutes. Are you able to answer the question about reaching a certain level of MLOps maturity yet?
Yeah, I make it short. I would rate ourselves as advanced beginners. Why advanced? Because we were at least able to build the full technical cycle. So from really automated data integration, running the machine learning process on a nightly basis and really push this data back into existing products, especially in the area of fundraising, churn analysis, donor lifetime value prediction, income prediction, things like this. Why beginner? People work with these numbers, but not on a federation level. It's more, let's say, some member associations use it to get a feeling if this fits into their regular approach. So scaling is the next big topic.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone, coming into the last minute, I just wanted to say huge thanks to everyone who joined us. And for those who have been presenting for us, Harini, Florian, Omran, great to have you here. And thanks so much for sharing. I know there'll be a follow-up if you have contacts that you can share with us so we can share those with participants as well. I think that would be greatly appreciated. And other than that, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, whether it's at the beginning, end, or otherwise. Have a great rest of the week. And thanks again to Omdena for hosting all of us here today. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you, Omdena. Bye-bye.